is like no place else.
Wait, you can't recycle the bag. You have to throw it away.
Proper recycling keeps it that way for everyone. Bags tangle in machinery and can bring sorting efforts to a halt.
No bags.
Trash the bags and keep our recycling program moving forward.
No, Mom, look, no plastic bags.
Do your part to keep our recycling bag-free. Trash the tanglers or return them to participating retailers. For more information, visit tampabayrecycles.org.
Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission. the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Welcome everyone to the April 8th, 2024 public hearing of Planning Commission on Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendments. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for the local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. For those of you who are not familiar with our process, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chairman. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal response. Planning commissioners will then ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. To all participants, please note that tonight's hearing concerns proposed changes to the comprehensive plan. Presentation should not include matters related to zoning applications and site plans that are not before the commission. Zoning conditions are not relevant to plan amendments and may not be considered by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's purview in making a recommendation is limited to consistency or inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd like to ask the clerk to go ahead and please call roll.
Bowden.
Here.
Buzza.
Here.
Cardenas.
Here.
Kona.
Here.
Fernandez. Kress.
Here.
Lauk. Saria.
Here.
Sebian.
Here.
Orton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. All right, our first agenda item is 2A, HCCPA 23-18, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Rural Area Utilities Policies, and the presenter is Melissa Dickens.
Good evening, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. This item is a text amendment to the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, HCCPA 2318. I do want to give you all a heads up that this amendment has a lot of complexity. There are a number of different components that we wanted to share with you in detail and also make sure that we had adequate time to cover the comments that we received from other agencies and also the comments from the community. So this may be a slightly longer presentation than a typical plan amendment. Following the presentation, I also wanted to let you know that EPC staff has a few words that they would like to say. So just wanted you to have that context moving forward. Some background on this amendment. It is publicly initiated. It is a proposed amendment to the One Water chapter. The primary intent of this amendment is to address adverse impacts from septic tanks. We have adopted comprehensive plan policy today, 5.2.8, that speaks to the need to address these impacts, and I'll go into a little more detail about that particular policy on another slide. Another intent of this amendment is to respond to unique circumstances when they arise that are in the public interest and create a predictable process. The policy changes were initiated by Planning Commission staff. We have had input and strong support from both the Environmental Protection Commission and Hillsborough County, particularly Hillsborough County Water Resources. Our partners are here today in person and also virtually, and I want to take the time to thank them for their extensive support on this amendment. Finally, you'll see that the section has been reorganized and restructured for clarity. The existing components that are there today are being retained. I'll breeze through this slide as quickly as possible. You all are very familiar with Hillsborough County Comp Plan policy. Future land use sets the development potential of the parcel. We have intentionally moved the utility policies to the One Water chapter. That took place in the development of One Water back in 2020. Generally, water and wastewater lines cannot be run outside the urban service area except for a few exceptions. The exceptions are listed here on your screen. If there's an existing line that exists in the rural area, so for example, if a line was previously run to address a public health hazard, there is a single service connection that is allowed. An owner could connect. This is implemented in the Land Development Code. And this section of the plan is a section that's been updated and amended over time. We recognized as part of this process the need for a revised structure for clarity. So I do want to talk a little bit about the genesis of this amendment, the environmental benefits of the amendment, and our partners, EPC, and their support. Back in 2020, we were working on the One Water chapter, and EPC kindly raised that there were some issues with concentrations of septic tanks, some environmental concerns. We believed that it was best to wait until after the future land use work had commenced on that update. So we added in this policy 5.2.8 that speaks to looking for alternatives to address septic concentrations, exploring updates to wastewater policy. So we are using that policy in this amendment today and implementing that policy that was created back in 2020 to implement through this policy today. We've had multiple agencies helping us, not only with the One Water chapter, but also with 2318. EPC is here, but just want to share a couple of items from their agency comments. The fact that it is indisputable that septic tanks contribute to pollution, particularly in areas with high groundwater or flood-prone areas. They believe that this amendment has a proactive criteria and mechanism to prevent potential harm and impacts, particularly for septic tank clustering, particularly in those vulnerable areas. There are previous examples of needing to provide wastewater because of failing septic tanks, and EPC is in full support of this amendment to further protect public health and the environment. Briefly, the overall structure of the amendment is a reorganized section. There are four main components: criteria for any wastewater or all potable water and wastewater extensions or connections in the rural area, criteria specifically for extension, criteria for connections to existing lines, and then criteria for the process for the Board of County Commissioners to consider, to utilize when considering exceptions in the public interest. Now I want to talk through the substantive changes for this amendment. You saw the comments from the environmental technical experts earlier. The first change is to allow for a water or wastewater extension when there is a documented environmental issue from either septic, private, or interim infrastructure. This is not something that Planning Commission staff will be making on our own. We would need some formal documentation from a regulatory agency. The next change is to enable water and wastewater extension to minimize new concentrations of septic in flood-prone areas. This has been crafted very carefully. We are not wanting to create an unpredictable situation or have extensions going kind of haphazardly. So anyone who would like to take advantage of this new policy would be required to meet all of the criteria in the policy. That's 4.3.3A5. So those include criteria about the distance from the urban service area, parcel size, the floodplain designation, and also the future land use density. And then finally, allowing properties adjacent to existing rural area lines to have service when subdividing. So right now, if there's a property that is adjacent to a utility line in the rural area and they subdivide, those parcels that are directly adjacent to the line, those are enabled to be on water and sewer, but the remainder of the parcel is on well and, or the remainder of the subdivision is on well and septic. So this creates, some confusion in the community, some disparities within particular communities. We get asked, why does my neighbor have service and I don't? So we wanted to create this policy to have more predictability. We also have instituted some safeguards within this policy to ensure that there are not unintended consequences. So stating that the utility infrastructure has to be sized for that particular development, can't be oversized for development beyond the adjacent parcel. The connection has to be made to the county's existing infrastructure. And then finally, and this is critical for this amendment, the density and intensity is the same, whether the property is on well and septic or on water and wastewater. So if they're allowed 10 units today on well and septic, they would be allowed 10 units on water and wastewater. Continuing the substantive changes, providing the ability for the board to respond to when there are unique circumstances, such as parks or libraries that are of overriding public interest and criteria for determining that. We've also added some requirements about line sizing and capacity technical feasibility that came from conversations with our partners in water resources, and then updated the policy about lot sizes and community plan compatibility to ensure that any parcels that are using utilities would be compatible with the surrounding community. There has been a significant amount of public engagement and outreach on this amendment. There are a number of members of the community here tonight. We really want to recognize and thank everyone that have spent at least a couple of evenings with us, appreciate the input from the community. It's very clear that the community cares deeply about this issue. And so I want to talk through what the conversations that we've had and some of what we've heard. Worked to ensure that the community was aware and informed about this amendment through a variety of methods, beginning last summer, announcing it at some of our other public meetings, as well as through the virtual options that you see at the top. In October of last year, we provided information to the Hillsborough County CAC. Their chair is here this evening. And then in February of 2024, a couple of months ago, we held a couple of meetings for the larger community, a virtual public meeting that had residents from across the county, and then we were invited to come to Keystone later the same week and talk to the folks up there, and had about 50 attendees at that meeting. The photo that you see on the right is from the meeting in Keystone. I wanted to share the feedback that we heard from the Hillsborough County Citizens Advisory Committee. They did issue a formal letter of support, noting that the amendment is a more efficient avenue to extend utility services. It mitigates environmental issues, mitigates septic clustering and addresses environmental issues, and also notes that despite this more robust path to sewer service, it would still protect the character and integrity of the rural area. This slide is very important. It summarizes what we've heard from the community. We got a lot of feedback in our public meetings. We also got a significant amount of feedback in written form. All of the comments that we received in our emails are included in attachment D in your packet. I do want to take some time and go through what we heard. First, we did hear some community support, desire for utility services, protection of lakes, protection of addressing future environmental concerns. And then there were a number of concerns that we did hear, particularly from the folks in the Keystone Odessa area. There were some concerns about a previous development on Patterson Road, although that is not associated with this amendment. We did hear a lot about it, so I wanted to recognize and state that. Heard some concerns about the oversizing of lines, some general concerns around this leading to further development, exacerbating sprawl, proliferation of development that is outside of the character of the rural area. Also heard some comments about the Keystone Odessa Community Plan and a request that that area be exempt. Concerns about how public interest in the first draft was originally defined, and then also concerns about existing residents being having to hook up and pay for those connections. So I did want to share how we've responded to the feedback. Again, we got a lot of great information. The first change that we made to the initial draft is making sure that overriding public interest is a defined term so that there's not confusion, there's not room for misinterpretation. So that is in the plan today, and we have capitalized it to speak to that. We also heard the concerns about consistency with the density and intensity of some of the community plans in the rural area, particularly Keystone Odessa. We have added a policy, or we have added to a policy that states that any development that is on utilities would have to be consistent with the lot sizes and the stipulations of the livable communities element. We've also clarified that the intent is not that an environmental issue may exist today, but rather being proactive. And then I do want to be transparent. There were a couple of items that we were not able to address. First, the requirement to connect. There was a call to put some language on that in the comprehensive plan. That's something that's handled by state statute. It's really kind of above the purview of the comprehensive plan, so we weren't able to address that. And then there were requests to exclude specific areas of the county from this amendment. We went back and looked at all of the feedback from the community, worked to address the concerns about the proliferation of development, strengthen the policy that states that this cannot be used as a justification for densities and intensities, and felt that we addressed the concerns about future development. We also believe it's a best practice to treat the rural area of Hillsborough County consistently. And so we hope that we have addressed the residents' concerns, and we have made that change to speak to that. We received comments from a number of agencies, supportive from EPC, Hillsborough County, and Hillsborough County Public Schools. No comment from IFAS Extension, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization. And one other item that I forgot to mention under community comments, I do understand the Farm Bureau has a comment letter that was just sent to me this afternoon. I think they may be distributing it when they come up, but just wanted to note we received that comment late today. Now the applicable comprehensive plan policies for consistency. This amendment is consistent with a number of goals, objectives, and policies across multiple sections. The One Water chapter, the policies regarding minimizing the adverse impacts of septic tanks, specifically that policy that directs staff to pursue updates to septic siting and wastewater connection that I mentioned earlier, and then also noting that septic tanks, when well maintained, are still an acceptable alternative. It's also consistent with the intergovernmental coordination section, objective 1.3, and the policies 1.1.1 through 1.1.3 and 1.3.3, which is all about coordination with subject matter experts. In this case, we coordinated very, very closely with the environmental experts as well as experts from the Water Resources Department. And then that last bullet, this must have been an older version of the presentation that should say property rights element. I apologize for the typo. But those policies are all about providing the public an opportunity to be heard, present evidence, and encouraging that the public has information and an opportunity to participate throughout the process. And for a recommendation, your Planning Commission staff recommends that HCCPA 2318 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. This concludes my presentation. I believe EPC has a couple of comments as well. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. For the record, my name is Janet Lorton. I'm the Executive Director for the Environmental Protection Commission. With me today is Sam El-Rabi. He's our Water Director. He has 37 years' experience, so we will be available if there are any questions to answer. I just have a few quick remarks. For background, I think One Water was initiated in 2018. I had a lot of public input and opportunity for public input. It did go through in 2020, but the Planning Commission said that they would bring this policy back, told many stakeholders, and so they did initiate that policy. There was a board meeting, 12, 13, and 23, where the BOCC was able to ask questions. I spoke at that meeting. I think several people here spoke at that meeting as well. I think there were 3 commissioners had questions about the flexibility of the line extension, and I think they kind of turned that over to Mr. Gormley. I'm not sure if Melissa Zornita was part of that. So the EPC is in support of the proposed One Water amendment of Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan under HCCPA 2318. The objective of this policy is to limit public potable and wastewater lines in the rural area, except under specified conditions, with the primary intent of addressing negative impacts from septic tanks and the protection of surface and groundwater. The proposed amendment provides clarity, transparency, and is a well-defined process and mechanism to address negative impacts from septic tanks or private franchise infrastructure, and adds an exceptions process to define when exceptions to the criteria to limit rural area utility extensions or connections may be considered. The amendment before you contains criteria for potable and wastewater line extension in the rural area. It's specified to include when it is to address an adverse environmental condition attributable to septic, private franchise, or interim infrastructure as documented by a regulatory agency, ourselves, Department of Health, etc. Extension into rural areas is also specified to include when it is to prevent septic tank clustering in areas prone to flooding, and then further defines the criteria to qualify under this provision. EPC supports this amendment to further protect public health and the environment. It was mentioned in Melissa's slide, but it is indisputable that septic tanks contribute to pollution, especially in areas with high groundwater or flooding conditions. And just to let you know, we have 200 lakes and 3 major tributaries, and septic systems are not inspected, and typically, and they're, wastewater does get reported. Wastewater overflows do get dealt with, but septic systems, there's no inspection, and so it is indisputable that they do cause groundwater issues. However, 1/3 of Florida's population is served by septic tanks, so it's not feasible to extend to all rural areas. And septic tanks are valuable. They have a place. I've been on septic tank my whole life in Waimama, in Lutz, and now in Thonotosassa. The proposed amendment criteria for line extension in the rural area to include protection of public health and the environment in cases of regulatory agency documented adverse conditions, it's reasonable. EPC is not aware of any current areas currently meeting this criteria, but there have been a few cases where EPC had investigated issues with communities on failing septic tanks that had the potential to affect surface water quality, sometimes with direct discharges to the bay, and in which the health department was also involved. In at least one of these cases, sewer service was extended by the county to their homes because of an environmental and public health hazard. The exceptions process, amendment paragraph 4.3.5, provides transparency and a mechanism for an exception by the board for unique circumstances within the public interest. The amendment notes the exception may be considered in limited cases of overriding public interest. It does not cause plant or line capacity, if it does not cause plant or line capacity to be exceeded, and is subject to review and approval by the Board of County Commissioners. This provision clarifies authority for the review of the application for the exception and defines the factors a stakeholder must meet to qualify for consideration of an exception. Again, this provides a transparent process and more predictability of review of the outcome for the applicant. While EPC has no knowledge of current cases of applicants, this mechanism is designed to proactively outline criteria to address future unknown public interest issues and cast a broad net to address unknown unique circumstances. What this amendment does not do, it does not change, the proposed amendment does not change land use, it does not change development density, it does not change development intensity. The objective of this policy is to limit in the rural service area under specific conditions. One Water does not change zoning. Any line extension or connection shall not be considered justification for increase in densities or intensities through the future land use map process as a basis for rezoning, as noted in 4.3.2.A.2. This amendment does not promote further development. This amendment does not require connection. You are not required to connect. There is no language for mandatory connection. An entity wishing to connect must apply to the county and meet the requirements to be considered. Therefore, in general, the amendment is good for the environment. It defines utility lines, connections, and expansion, but does not open the pathway for any further development than is already considered for connection and expansion. The proposed amendment does not require or compel connections, and the proposed amendment does not prohibit stakeholders from seeking connection under defined circumstances and framework. In conclusion, the proposed amendment is consistent with One Water, intent to limit expansion and connection in the rural service area, while also addressing negative impacts from septic tanks and public health or adverse environmental conditions. The criteria for both extension and connection remain limited, but better defined and ensures that any extension or connection does not promote further development. It sets a proactive criteria and mechanism to prevent potential harmful impacts from the future septic tank clustering where feasible and practical, especially in areas with high water tables or prone to flooding. The EPC is in full support of proposed amendment and appreciates the efforts of addressing the environmental impacts by specifically including these criteria in evaluating proposed utility extensions or connections in the rural service area. And I appreciate you allowing us to have the time. I normally don't read my remarks, but I wanted to make sure that I got all of that into the record and utilizing the language from the comp plan amendment. But thank you so much for your time. And we're here for questions.
All right, thank you. This is publicly initiated, all right. So I guess we will turn it over to our public comments from the public. And I will start, because we have a long list, so I'll remind everybody 3 minutes per person. Please be polite. I'm going to get everybody in, but we'll start virtually with Nancy Paderaki. Is Nancy Paderaki on the line?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Nancy Paderaki, 18128 Gun Highway, Odessa, Florida. I have slides to present. Thank you. February 15th of this year, the president of the Keystone Community Association proposed that Keystone Odessa be excluded from this amendment. And the residents present at this meeting widely supported this proposal. Next slide. The extreme northwest portion of the county should be excluded from this amendment because there already is the opportunity, if there is a public health hazard, to extend the lines. Additionally, the EPC has already stated publicly, more than once, that there's no known septic problem in Keystone. There's also no engineering feasibility study, no funding plan, no cost analysis, and maintenance costs to this area is projected to be significantly more expensive. And the language, like unique circumstances and overriding public interest, is very vague and it allows for inconsistent interpretation. Next slide. In fact, in February of this year, the EPC actually said that to extend the sewer and the water throughout the county is not feasible, practical, nor warranted. Next slide. Some areas of the public utilities are already struggling with water pressure in their monthly bills. As a result of paying the full cost of extending public utilities into the few high-risk, low-lying, and coastal areas, the county's funding will run out in the next couple of years. Next slide. There is no data identifying Keystone has a problem. That means you would be asking thousands of residents to get rid of their septic and their wells to basically throw out their baby with the bathwater. Can public utilities ever be extended into Keystone effectively and efficiently? And public utilities has its own issues, also with contamination. So what quality of service would the Keystone residents all the way out in the northwest corner of the county be left with? There's no why, there's no how, there's no who, there's no when. I say no way, not in Keystone, Odessa. Next slide. So I'm going to ask you not to put the cart before the horse. Document Keystone, Odessa as excluded from this amendment in the corresponding land use codes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so that was the only person that we had signed up virtually, according to my list. So we will go over to the people in person here now, and we will start off with the applicant, Adam Eland.
Good evening, board members. My name is Adam Eland. Hello again. I am the chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee to Hillsborough County, and I'm here today in support of this amendment. For those of you who don't know, the Citizens Advisory Committee is a volunteer board, 2 members appointed by each county commissioner, and we meet every month to consider the issues that impact the county and advise the commissioners. And the reason I'm here today is we undertook about a 5-month investigation of everything septic around Hillsborough County, which was that's a long time to consider septic tanks. But we did it, and in the course of that investigation, Executive Director Zornita and Ms. Dickens came and spoke to us about this amendment, and graciously attended our meeting and gave us a rundown of it. We started investigating septic tanks for a very simple reason. We were speaking with ACA Cassidy, who mentioned that there is federal money to convert some septic to sewer in the town and country area of Hillsborough County, but that despite it being completely funded by the government, they only had a 40% uptake rate. Only 40% of people were taking that money, so we wanted to know why. And what we learned in our investigation was it's very difficult to unring the bell. It's very obtrusive. It's expensive in other ways other than the actual cost of putting sewer in, and it's a very difficult process. And anyone who knows that area or some of the other areas that are developed and are in the urban service area but have legacy septic know that this can be a challenge. So like many issues, it goes back to growth, and growth goes back to planning. And we see this amendment, we support this amendment because we think it's a critical tool to expand utilities into rural areas without forcing them into the urban service area. We see it as a way of preserving rural areas. A number of the members of our board are very concerned about that. Our septic tank users, our septic tank supporters, and we learned a lot about how safe and beneficial septic tanks can be. The issue is clustering and environmentally sensitive areas. So if we have a mechanism to extend connections to those areas without invading those areas with other aspects of the urban service area, we need those tools. Because once septic tanks are in, we don't have any tools. At least in this county, we don't have any tools. There's no inspections. There's no data on where these, excuse me, I guess my time is up. I'm here for any questions that you have. Thank you for your time, and we also entered a letter for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Next up, we have Reed Fishbach.
Good evening, Reed Fishbach, and I am in support of CPA 2318. Overall, the ability to extend water and wastewater is limited within the amendment. I have worked on a couple of rural service area extensions in my career, and it has been extremely limited. So it would be nice to have a couple more tools available, a couple other options in which extension could be justified. In many cases, there is unused capacities in areas where a potential extension would occur. This would be one way to create more utilization and efficiency of the infrastructure that Hillsborough County has already invested in. The main focus of this amendment is for environmental purposes, and I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Missy Nordbeck.
Melissa Nordbeck. If the true reason for this proposed comp plan amendment is to address negative impacts from septic tanks, it is unnecessary. The existing One Water policy already addresses existing health or environmental issues. The existing One Water policy already addresses septic tanks in well-filled protection areas and well-filled mitigation areas. County staff claims this amendment is necessary for, quote, reorganization purposes and ease of use. The existing One Water policy is 1.5 pages. It is clear and concise. The new proposed amendment is 3 pages and contains vague and alarming language such as extension and connection may be considered in cases of overriding public interest, and the degree to which a project would create environmental, social, transportation, or other benefits. It seems the true reason for this amendment is to work in conjunction with the future land use update that allows for extension of the urban service area. At the March 19th BOCC meeting, commissioners heard comp plan amendments requesting an extension of the USA in the Waimama area for a whopping 2,231 acres. The county cannot afford to place infrastructure in rural areas far from other public amenities, yet this is where the buildable land is. The amendment allows the developer to extend utilities to their large subdivisions and install the utilities for the county. Nothing in this amendment addresses septic safety or design. It does not recommend any additional safeguards. It simply outlines the process for extension of utilities in the rural area strictly for development that is presently prohibited. There have been very few instances of communities on failing septic tanks, yet since 2016, there have been over 6 million gallons of sewage and wastewater spilled or dumped into our waterways by Hillsborough and surrounding counties due to broken pipes, pumping station failures, and blockage issues. Developers don't have to build mega subdivisions to make a profit. If they want to develop in the rural area, they need to build on a smaller scale because the current policy contains strict spacing requirements for well and septic placement to protect waterways, wetlands, and neighboring properties. Please do not allow this phony amendment to proceed.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Jake Kramer.
Good evening. My name is Jake Kramer, 401 East Jackson Street, number 2100 here in Tampa. I'm a land use attorney. I know most of you. Tonight, though, I'm appearing before you in my board capacity as a board member of the Hillsborough County Farm Bureau. Hillsborough County Farm Bureau, we represent 4,000 member families here in Hillsborough County. As you can imagine, the majority of those families' land ownership is in the rural service area of the county. And we steadfastly are here to support this amendment. We were very involved, we were very concerned initially when One Water was presented to us a number of years ago. We worked closely with staff, Planning Commission staff and EPC staff on our concerns about that package of amendments, and we've been in conversation with them since then about these particular amendments, and we're here supporting them today because they worked with us, listened to our concerns. As an organization, one of our big concerns is utilities choice, and we believe that members, landowners should have the opportunity to connect when it's the right environmental circumstance. And so we think this particular amendment, the way it's been written, satisfies that and gives the opportunity to connect where it makes sense. We're also concerned about water quality. Water quality is the lifeblood of the agricultural industry, and we think this is a win for everyone in the county to ensure that we have better water quality, and it could lead to water quality improvements based on the baseline scenario now. So with that, we ask you to support this amendment. Thank you. I also entered a letter into the record that I circulated to staff earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Trish Lawton.
Hello, my name is Trish Lawton. I'm the Secretary of Keystone Civic Association. I'm here to oppose this amendment. The Farm Bureau just said that one of the most important features is that property owners have a choice. And the EPC said that it was stated that there's no language to force connection. Likewise, there's no language that states the county cannot force connection. So without that language in this amendment, we don't actually know whether we can be forced or not forced. So for that reason, Keystone Civic Association opposes this amendment.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have two more who didn't name what they wanted to talk about. So I'm going to try George Butler. Is George Butler here for this one? No. All right, and I have a Ward N. Is Ward N? Yeah.
Ward Netcher, resident, lifelong resident of Keystone. I live at 18421 Gun Highway. My little farm, we're down to 30 acres now. But this amendment is problematic because with just the wells and septics, which aren't a problem in Keystone at this point in time, okay? Keystone is unique. The lakes are sand bottom. When you use a septic system, you bring in sand because the ground does not percolate properly. If you have clay or a high water table, then you need to bring in the sand that Keystone is made of. So it's already, if there's such a thing as a perfect drain field, Keystone is, okay? There isn't a problem to be solved about having these septic tanks. The distance between a septic tank and a well is 75 feet. The reason why they want to change the over to the county water and sewer is to increase density. They're saying, no, we're not going to increase density and intensity, but how else can you afford to put this infrastructure in unless you are increasing the density and intensity? So there's strings of reasons to deny this amendment, but predominantly all of the blah, blah, blah I have that I can't really read because I didn't bring any glasses, is to exempt Keystone because it's not a cluster problem as long as they stay with the one house per acre or one per 5 acres. There isn't a clustering. If there is an area with clusters of septic tanks, which seems to be the oh my God here, where is it? Fix the problem. Don't pretend like we're gonna have a problem because you're about to create a problem by running the public utilities in there. Then you will have a problem because then you'll have all of the phosphates and all the stuff that people are gonna put on their yards, and they're gonna be teeny weeny little lots like they're already building in there, and they're calling it a 1 acre gross. Well, the lots are so small they can't have a well and septic. It's okay to have 3 horses on the property according to the PD, but that's ridiculous. And running the sewer line, oversized sewer line, over a mile into the rural service area is urban sprawl, which is one of those things that we're supposed to be stopping. By running the utilities in there, it encourages sprawl. And the sprawl can't happen if you disallow the utilities. So the septic tanks, as awful as they are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I had one in between here. Elizabeth White is supposed to be in person. Yes.
work? My name's Elizabeth White. I live in Keystone, Odessa. I've read the amended proposal, and while the word existing has been removed in regard to public health hazard, I do wish to address 4.3.2, Section 4. What is a necessity, and exactly who in Hillsborough County directs this necessity? Appendix 3, oversize process and oversizing reimbursement program, is found in Hillsborough County's Water, Wastewater, and Reclaimed Water Technical Manual that outlines the oversizing process. It states county commission approval is required, and negotiating the terms of the size agreement must be agreed upon the developer, utility planning, and the Public Works Department. This is to happen before the developer submits their construction plans and receives a plan approval letter. And this process calls for 2 BOCC meetings, one to approve the oversizing agreement and one to accept it, public meetings. Adam Gormley, Director of Development Services, confirmed there is no process for a retroactive oversizing agreement at the December 12th, 2023 BOCC meeting. Yet, at the March 6, 2024 BOCC meeting, agenda A43 for oversized pipes at Oakmont Self-Storage was listed as a consent item. This means there's no public discussion. Fortunately, one commissioner pulled this from the consent agenda to allow the public to speak. The Oakmont storage pipes were installed 2 years ago. The oversizing agreement George Cassidy presented to BOCC was written 2 weeks prior to the BOCC meeting, not prior to construction of these oversized utilities that are required by the oversizing process. The BOCC approved and accepted the oversized agreement at the same meeting at a cost of $582,501 to taxpayers. This amount does not include maintenance of these pipes that are borne from taxpayer dollars. The university area is the Flint, Michigan of Hillsborough County with toxic water. You people in Gibsonton desperately waiting on septic to sewer programs. This is a necessity. Yet a storage facility jumped to the head of the line to be reimbursed almost $600,000 of taxpayer money. There's no health hazard in Tonasassa, sorry. The oversized pipes currently being installed in Keystone, Odessa do not have an oversizing agreement. Yet the county told the developer to install the pipes anyway. The builder expects to be reimbursed. The oversized pipes in Keystone cost more than 3 times the amount given to the Oakmont storage builder. There's no recorded or current health hazard in Keystone. Keystone should be exempt from the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all we had sign up. So with that, I will allow for rebuttal response.
I'm happy to clarify anything that was stated by the community, or if there are things that commissioners have specific questions on. I think that might be the most productive way to approach it.
All right. All right, then over to the commissioners for comments, discussion on this one, opinions. Commissioner Buzza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the easiest thing would be, I mean, I read that thing 4 times and I didn't see that it was a requirement if there's no wastewater lines in the area to connect to wells or city or county water in the sewer. Am I incorrect in that assumption? That
there's no requirement in this plan amendment that speaks to that. The reason that we did not include specific language is because that is something that's handled by state statute. It's outside of the comp plan's purview.
Right.
So we want to be transparent about that.
All right, thank you.
All right. Questions? Any other questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Kona?
Yeah, is excluding Keystone, Odessa outside the purview of state statute?
I don't believe so, but we, our staff recommendation is to have the rural area treated consistently. So that's why we were not able to respond to that.
But certainly that is within, if this board's recommendation includes excluding Keystone Odessa, that's within your purview to make that recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, I had one question. I was just wondering, and I'm just going to say this straightforwardly because that's how I do things. It didn't seem like this did much. It just seems really administrative and procedural. Like it doesn't compel anyone to do anything. It doesn't, prevent anyone from doing anything. It's just kind of like, okay, if this situation happens where there's like a floodplain area, we kind of want to make a mechanism if someone wants to, for them to not have to cluster things in that area. Nothing's compulsionary, nothing's, so am I understanding this correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
no, that's correct. I mean, so when this started, we were focused on how can we respond to the adopted policy that's in the comprehensive plan today, 5.2.8 that I keep pointing to. We worked very closely with EPC and Water Resources to come up with language that would address those specific concerns. So if there is an environmental issue, we want to have something in the comp plan that speaks to it. How would we be able to extend utilities to address that? Not a public health hazard, that's a little different, but an environmental issue, we wanted to be able to do that. Similarly, EPC raised that there can be issues when septic tanks are clustered, when it's a high groundwater table prone to flooding, so we wanted to create a policy to address that. The reason that the strike-through underline of everything in its entirety exists is because as we were going through it, we found that it was not well organized. Things were kind of in different places. They had been added over time. And so we thought it was cleaner to just strike everything and then put everything in an order that was appropriate and made sense. So that's why it looks much larger than it is, but really the changes are much more surgical.
All right. Well, yeah, it seems to me Mr. Kramer said it best. It gives people just a lot of options, which I guess could be used nefariously, but I can't comment on Board of County Commissioners. That's their business and stuff like that. So thanks for your response. Commissioner Kona.
Yeah, so in the current water policy that we have now, is there anything that prohibits anyone in the Keystone area from requesting to be able to get access to those services?
Yeah, I mean, the policy is pretty, the policy which remains unchanged with the exception of these surgical changes is water and wastewater cannot be extended into the rural area. Keystone is in the rural area unless it meets the certain exceptions. So there are exceptions that exist today, public health hazard, public school, wellhead resource protection area. I can go back and make sure I catch them all. But this adds the exception if there's a documented environmental hazard, it adds the exception for clustering of septic tanks in flood-prone areas. And then it also adds a process for the Board of County Commissioners if there's something like a library or a school or another reason that is of overriding public interest to have an exceptions process.
Commissioner Kress.
I think everybody we heard from tonight was from Keystone, Odessa. Are you hearing from other parts of the county with similar complaints asking to be excluded?
We have not received any other requests to be excluded. We did have folks from other parts of the county at the virtual public meetings, and when we sent out information on this amendment, we made sure to send it out to all of the rural area neighborhood organizations, civic associations, things like that. Yeah, we've only received the request from Keystone, Odessa.
And some of those communities have a community plan adopted
Yes,
as well?
yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just ask this for my own clarification one more time, because it just seems really weird to me, but this doesn't supersede the Keystone Community Plan.
No.
And even if something were triggered, it still doesn't supersede that or compel anyone to do anything.
And we did actually update one of the policies to make sure that it was hopefully even more crystal clear that we want to make sure that just because there is utilities, it does not mean you can have an increase in density or intensity or have a development pattern that is inconsistent with the community plan.
All right. Okay, thanks. Are there any more questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Cardenas?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, is there, in work, I've come across situations where I've seen issues with septic tanks, so I see the reasoning for this. I'm wondering, is there anything in here that actually creates a situation where it compels the EPC to act and there's funding for that? Is there, how does that work?
That would compel the connection.
Or the connection, or will basically say, hey, there's an issue over here, you guys need to come?
Yeah, so the way that that exception would be triggered is there would have to be some formal documentation from EPC, from the health department, from a regulatory agency that says there is an issue. Then then utility lines would be allowed to be run. But in terms of the funding, there are a number of different funding mechanisms. In the past, I know for water projects, they've had funding from other state agencies. There's often federal funding for these sorts of things. We have someone from Water Resources here who might be able to speak more closely to that, but that's my understanding.
It's just, there's areas where, you've got septic tanks that are below that water line, and, I mean, it's an issue, but they don't have the money to, some of these are older properties, and they don't have the money to get that resolved or get that fixed, so, they don't have the resources and the funding to do that on their own property. Well, there's a timeline, right? So, usually different periods of the year, these people just can't use their bathrooms to a certain extent.
If I could clarify, nothing in this policy requires them. This just allows them, if they want to address the issue that you're describing, they would be permitted to, if a regulatory agency said, yes, there's an issue here, then they could extend the lines to fix it, but that doesn't mean they have to do that.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually coming at it from the other end to saying, getting the regulatory agencies to go out there and say that there's an issue, that in itself seems to be an issue, when there is an issue to a certain extent.
I don't know if it's our purview to be telling the EPC how to do their job, but.
When it's residential, it's the Department of Health. And when it's more of a commercial, it would be us. I mean, there was a recent issue out there on 579, the line goes to Strawberry Crest, but Burger King, they kept having all these septic tank issues all around there. There's a 7-Eleven, a McDonald's, all those things. The Department of Health gave them warning notices. We gave them warning notices. They were doing everything possible, but we handle more of a commercial aspect. The residential is always handled by the health department. So, and again, when somebody's doing their best to rectify the situation, obviously the developer in that case could petition the county and perhaps hook up to Strawberry Crest or something like that. That's where these issues come into play. And I'll tell you from a residential, Ladera, which is out there in the Lutz, Keystone area, they did hook up to wastewater and septic outside the rural service area. They decreased their density by 10%, but they were able to save all those septic systems from being put out there in a very low water table with all of those lakes around. So it has been done in the past as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Bowden.
Yes, I guess I'm trying to understand the piece about when it is compelling and when it's not. And I know that FEMA changes this floodplain, flood thing. So say, for instance, that someplace in Keystone area, Odessa, FEMA changes the flood area. So that, does a government agency then says that you are allowed to hook up? So you're not compelled, you're not forced to do it, but you have the opportunity because of that floodplain change. That's the only change that would happen.
So if the floodplain changed and a new property were to be in the floodplain, and they were within a quarter mile of the urban service area and 20 acres or larger in size and located within a future land use category that was one dwelling unit or greater, then yes, they would be eligible. So it's, if something changes in terms of the flood mapping, we want to make sure we're using best available data. So that would be something that we would rely on someone who's requesting this to provide. So if we know if they have the current FEMA map and it shows that, then that's the tool that we would use.
All right, and I just want to say for my own part, I didn't mean to say that it doesn't do anything. Obviously, it does do a lot, but it's just administrative, like I said. So, Are there any other comments from the commissioners or Commissioner Kress?
I'll just say, it seems like you've done a good job of balancing all of the needs. There's some flexibility built into it, and I think the fact that you're keeping the density intensities the same gives me comfort. So personally, I will support the consistency rolling.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments, discussion items from the commissioners? I'm not seeing any lights, so going once, going twice. I'm going to close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we find HC CPA 23-18 consistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and forward on to the county commissioner.
Commissioner Kress?
Second that.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza, a second to that motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Cardenas. Are there any questions or comments, a discussion item from the commissioners? Nope, not seeing any at this time. We'll all signify their approval or agreement by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is item 2B, HCCPA 23-20 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 1322 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and the presenter is David Hay.
I need new glasses, I think. Good evening, David Hay, your Planning Commission staff. The next item for your review is HCCPA 2320. It's located at 1322 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. This request is a small-scale amendment. It is privately initiated. It's approximately 4.83 acres. Currently, the subject site is designated the Residential 1 Future Land Use category, and the applicant is looking to go to the Light Industrial Planned Future Land Use category. The subject site is located in the rural area. It is located also within the Seffner Mango Community Plan, and has also been identified to be located within a wellhead protection zone. Here we have an aerial of the subject site. You can see it's outlined in pink. This blue line represents the urban service area boundary, so everything to the south and to the west of this line is within the urban service area, and then all of this to the north and east is in the rural area. As you can see, there's some existing light industrial to the east of the subject site. To the north, west, and south, it's all large lot, single-family residential or agricultural uses. There's some vacant also scattered throughout that area. Here we have some photos of the subject site. Here we're looking from East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard toward the subject site. Here we're now standing in front of the subject site. It's over on the right. We're looking west down East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. You can see the railroad tracks are directly on the south side of Dr. MLK there in the picture on the left. Here we're looking east, down East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Again, the subject site on this is over on the left side. You can see the railroad tracks directly across the street again. Here is a view of the subject site looking into the site. We put the camera over the fence. Here's the view of the subject site's western boundary. So you can see there's some cars. That's the western boundary right there in where the cars are at. Here we're at the north. We're on Vinekeeper Court. This is the subdivision that's located to the north of the subject site. I do believe there's an intervening piece, intervening parcel between the subject site and this subdivision, but this is the large lot, single-family detached to the north. Here we have the adopted future land use map. You can see the subject site and properties to the north and west are all under that Residential 1 future land use category. Directly to the east, we have that light industrial planned. To the south, within the urban service area, we have the residential 4 future land use category. And then on the west side of Chastain Road, it is that residential 2. The applicant is seeking to extend that light industrial plan. You can see this is what the map would look like if the proposed future land use map amendment is finally adopted. Currently, the subject site under the residential 1 can be considered for a maximum of 4 dwelling units, or a maximum of 52,598 square feet if it meets commercial locational criteria. Under the light industrial plan, it would remove all the residential potential off the site. The intensity would increase up to the potential of 157,000 approximately square feet of non-residential uses. Again, it introduces light industrial and commercial intensive uses and would remove the residential potential. As always, we seek input from our partner agencies, and those comments are included in your packet for your review. None of our partner agencies filed any objections to the proposed request. Your Planning Commission staff has reviewed the proposed request in the adopted comprehensive plan and has found the request inconsistent with numerous comprehensive plans, objectives, and policies. Objective 4 of the future land use element establishes that the rural areas shall provide areas for long-term agricultural uses and large lot, low-density rural residential uses, which can exist without the threat of urban and suburban encroachment. The proposed change would allow for further urban encroachment into existing zoned low-density residential areas and agricultural areas, and would eliminate residential uses from being considered on the subject site. It is therefore inconsistent with the intent of FLU Objective 4. Planning Commission acknowledges the light industrial plan future land use designation located east of the subject site. However, staff must also consider the residential 1 future land use category to the immediate west and north, along with the residential 4 future land use category to the south. The request is to change the nature of the allowable land uses from low-density residential densities to industrial activities. Removing the residential uses and increasing the scale and intensity of the site's allowable uses in this manner would not meet the intent of Policy 7.1, Objective 8, and its associated policies. The request for light industrial plan, was also found inconsistent with numerous neighborhood and community development and community design related policies by not creating an appropriate transition of density and intensity between established development and existing single-family detached residential. The request just expands the LIP category into additional areas of the established rural area. The subject site is located within the Seffner-Mango Community Plan, which provides policy guidance on preferred development patterns within their community. Goal 2 of the community plan seeks to enhance community character and ensure quality residential and non-residential development. To meet this goal, the community plan discourages commercial encroachment into the residential areas between US Highway 92 and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. This strategy discourages the intensification of residential areas within the aforementioned area. Allowing LIP within this boundary where there are several existing residential dwelling units would directly conflict with this goal. Goal 3 of the community plan also provides guidance on commercial developments. One of the strategies under this goal seeks to support light industrial uses along US 92 and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard between I-75 and County Road 579, which is Mango Road. The subject site does not fall into this designated area. Similarly, it is located within the rural area, which precludes it from the strategy that seeks to recognize the commercial character of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard within the urban service area. Based upon these conflicts with the goals of the community plan, the proposed amendment is inconsistent with the Seffner-Mango Community Plan. That plan is found within the Livable Communities element. The subject site is located within a wellhead resource protection area. Goal 1 and Objective 1.3 of the One Water element seeks to protect and preserve water resources so that surface water and groundwater quantity and quality, is protected for future use. Per policy 1.3.9 of the One Water element, new developments within the wellhead resource protection area are subject to all regulations, criteria, standards, methodologies, and procedures designed to prevent the potential degradation of public potable water supplies. Policy 1.3.12 restricts additional areas of industrial land use within the wellhead resource protection areas. So the request directly conflicts with this policy direction. So based on all that, the Planning Commission staff does recommend to you this evening that the proposed map amendment be found inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Rebecca Kurt with Brooks and Rocha, 400 North Tampa Street. I am here representing the applicant for this comprehensive plan change. Yeah, thank you. So I'm putting this up first to try to show exactly what portion we are requesting the change for, because there has been some confusion. We do have some neighbors in attendance tonight that I have just had an opportunity to speak to for the first time tonight. And it was a nice conversation. They're here to express their concerns to you, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to address those concerns. But there was, my client owns 4 parcels in this general area. The parcels directly to the east of this and this parcel are parcels that are part of the subject business that's operating currently. The parcel to the north of it was recently purchased and is not part of this request. It is going to be is going to remain with its current comp plan designation. We're not requesting a change to light industrial. It is just a portion that fronts this road. So it's about a 4.83 acre site. And again, the request is a change from Res 1 to light industrial plan. The use that is currently on the property is a salvage business. It salvages vehicles for the sheriff's office, TPD, the fire departments. It also donates cars to the fire department and HEC for rescue training. This business has been in the family since 1992, operating on the portions to the east. There are two folios that are an L-shaped parcel. If you go back in the maps, the portion to the east has been in some sort of salvage business since 1965. You can go back and see the old aerials from FDOT to show that. The business as it currently operates does not do recycling on premises. It preps the cars for the recycling. That's why we are able to ask for light industrial as opposed to a heavy industrial. Also, I want to, this parcel, which was purchased later, and I'll get a little bit more into that, currently only has open storage. None of the industrial parts of the business are on that, and that is how we plan to continue on as we go through this process. Again, this is kind of showing you the general area. Again, this is on MLK. The photos that you showed a portion of MLK that looks kind of like a small rural road. That road has been planned since the 80s to be a 6-lane major arterial road. And in fact, that's happening right now. All of these parcels that front MLK have had the front portions of their properties purchased, and eminent domain has already occurred. Staging has occurred. The cars that are shown in front of the fence are in fact, FDOT workers, and this is going to happen. This is going to be a major, major road that this operation is going to be fronting, in addition to be across the street from MLK is a major freight line. This is showing what you've already seen, which is the existing uses in the area, and I wanted to show this one for a couple different purposes. One, to show, although this is in the rural service area, it's not just rural and residential areas along this portion of MLK. Our portion is the 2 red parcels, the one that we're requesting to see LIP, and the portion to the east, which is already LIP. It is LIP all the way down to this edge right here. These areas were a mixture of manufacturing and agricultural uses, starting in the 60s, zoning caught up in the 70s, and then when the first comprehensive plan came through, they were designated as low-density residential. our clients and the adjoining properties didn't notice, and that went through. And then when zoning conformance went through and they were taken down to CG zoning and made non-conforming, everyone, it came to everyone's attention. They went down to the Board of County Commissioners and complained that all of their businesses that had been established were made non-conforming. So we have to the east of, well, ours is the two parcels right here, and then we have a cast concrete business, a truss manufacturing business, a septic tank manufacturing business, and some mini storage all along this area. The Board of County Commissioners directed staff to come back with a comp amendment change, and they came back with a category of LIP. LIP is somewhat of an unusual, not particularly unique, but definitely unusual category that you don't see that often, because it requires you to come in with a rezoning. And I listened to the chairman at the beginning, and I've heard that a million times, and I agree with it. When you come in with a comprehensive plan change, you can't typically look to what your rezoning in your site plan is, but this category is unique, and that it says the light industrial uses may be appropriate in this area, but only if there is a site plan zoning that comes along with it to show that you are mitigating any adverse effects to the surrounding properties. And I do want to say thank David and several of the members of the Planning Commission staff who were very kind and took a lot of their time to speak with me, because I wanted to see, is there a category that we can come in for light industrial? We're not planning on putting any of the industrial uses on this parcel. We're looking to keep it open storage, which is what it is today. And we were told that there weren't any other that they would support because it's in the rural area. And so when we put some thought to it, we thought that the light industrial would be the plan category that would give the most assurance to the Planning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners, and the neighbors that this is going to be an operation that will be a benefit to the area. I'm just going to show these very quickly. This shows like 1965 and all the cars that were already on the parcel, and this is some of the earlier zoning, what the old zoning maps used to look like. Go back to this one. So I've explained what happened to the parcel to the east. This parcel that is in question, or that we're petitioning today for a change, was purchased in 1998 by a landscape and irrigation company. So since 1998, up until it was purchased by my client in 2012, it was operated as a landscape and irrigation company with some additional open storage that went along with that. So my client saw that there was some open storage, thought it would be a good way to expand his business in a way that would not negatively affect the neighbors, because it was already a commercial business that had open storage. What he didn't understand is that there is an ag exemption for open storage with an ag business. And he did, in fact, speak to people from the county. He was advised to put up a white fence, which you saw in those pictures, which he did. His property appraiser category changed, so he thought he was in compliance until he came into this recently, and we advised him that we think the best course of action is to get a comprehensive plan change and then to come in with a rezoning change for all of the parcels. So what we plan to do in very short order, after we listen to some of the concerns that the neighbors have, is to come in with a PD zoning, which is required by this comp plan category, with all of these parcels. This parcel in back was purchased by my client, in effect, to be a buffer. Now, I've heard that there may have been some bleed over, and I'm going to look into that and talk to my client about that and make sure that this remains what it was supposed to be. It's Res 1. The intent is to leave it Res 1. There are also some additional things we could do. This is the part that is already has an LIP category. This is where the car crusher is. The car crusher is loud. There's no way around that. But I did go out on site and spent some time, and there are a lot of things you can do with sound attenuation with the sound crusher. It is currently angled, and so the sound goes a certain direction, and we could propose to move that closer to the highway and change the direction of the sound, and that's going to help a lot with sound mitigation. There's additional things we can do with buffers and fencing that that will, I think, make it clear that even this existing portion, which is in the LIP, where this use is allowed, we can make this area a lot better for the neighbors, in addition to the portion that we're requesting to change to LIP today. At this time, I'm available for any questions, and I'm eager to listen to what the neighbors have to say.
All right, thank you. All right, we had a few people sign up for this one, so we will start off with, let me see if there's anyone virtual. If we do, there's one person virtual. Is Scott Liu on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Scott Liu, 413 Vinekeeper Court, probably roughly, I'd say 100 yards from the subject property. My main concerns would be soil quality. We have swift mud swales that during heavy rains back up with water, rain runoff. I have a shallow well, less than 100 feet deep, that used to provide, this was a plant nursery. And so a lot of water quality concerns on my end for this operation to expand. So I'd request that you would find this application inconsistent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now to in person. We will start with Michelle Miles.
Thank you for your time, and my name is Michelle Miles. I live at 412 Vinekeeper Court, Seffner, and am one of 9 one-acre home residents in the Stevens Manor subdivision, sorry. First, I appreciate all of the work that the Planning Commission staff did preparing this 129-page report. I'm just, Mark, the applicant, has been currently and knowingly, despite what I'm sure his attorney believes, a heavy commercial business without proper zoning, and he has been using agricultural and single-family conventional 1 unit per acre parcels to gradually expand onto other residential property. Tonight, it's hard for me to comprehend how he is doing that with complete disregard to our wells, our communities. We had less than 7 days to prepare. He's been doing this for a very long time and has, in the SunBiz org, 54 businesses. So you can pretty much be guaranteed that he knows what he's doing at our expense. And I don't mean just my neighbors, our community, our public funds that's going to have to clean up any of the contamination that he does to the wells, to our wetlands. We have a permitted swift mud, hold on, I've got to look at that, sorry. Thank you. Stormwater retention pond that we have for the last 5 years. We've had to maintain it twice, and there has been black silt that we had no clue where it was coming to. Well, now we understand what we're cleaning up. His property drains, it abuts, and they showed that, it abuts our cul-de-sac, my neighbors' homes. We had to pay thousands of dollars getting this cleaned up, not knowing where it was coming from until now. In 2022, we had it renewed. We spent thousands of dollars to clean it and hours. And now, one thing, is my time over?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to show one thing? Please, sir?
Quickly, hurry up and wrap it up.
American Holding Lands purchased the property in 2012 from that, the irrigation company, but that was an irrigation company. And 2014, they purchased this one. That was approved and allowed under that zoning. He is not grandfathered in
our community was established in 2005. So please, I ask you to uphold the Planning Commission staff recommendation and not allow this man to continue harming our water. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Tim Miles.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for your time. Michelle Miles, my wife, said it all very well. I've actually have a couple of photos or screenshots I'd like to put on the Elmo, to put on the screen. Okay, so you saw some maps already. What you see here in the yellow with the red dot is the 1322 Dr. Martin Luther King. Right above that, where it says Chastain Road, right here, this is another residential lot that he has all kinds of stuff on that already. The lot that's in question tonight has been operating with this business for 10 years, a decade, without the proper zoning or licensing or anything. All 4 of these lots are owned by this gentleman, and he's definitely going to convert this into heavy commercial. The next photo I have okay, the back line back here is the property line to the subdivision. As you can see, these dark spots in the dirt, this is where that crusher is. This is dark stuff all over the soil. This has got to be fluids from vehicles, oil, fuel, power steering fluid, transmission fluid. This is another screenshot showing how dark it is. This is the front property. This is Martin Luther King up front. This is the small little front property. All this soil is extremely black in color. The only thing that I think that could cause that is, again, fluids from vehicles. This is another photo. This is actually the residential lot that's just north of 1322, right here. This is the subdivision homes right up against it. You can see right here, this is all stuff on a residential lot that he's already taken over and utilizing. All these trees right here are diseased or dead. I'm not sure what killed them, but probably roots being soiled with fuel and oil. This photo is just a blown up shot of this other residential lot north of 1322 Dr. Martin Luther King. This whole lot is being utilized. I know my time's up, just a couple more seconds. There's also more photos that I don't have time to show, but there is just tons and tons of tires in these photos, filled up in 40-yard dumpsters, like 8 or 10 of them. Where are all these tires going? That's more hazardous waste. Where are all the manifests for this? Who's regulating this? This is all hazardous waste, and it's all going on our property, and it's going in our wells. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up we have Pamela Van Verberg. Okay.
Thank you for your time tonight. I'm not a public speaker, so forgive me, but I want to, how do you turn this on? Oh. There. Is there a way to zoom it? Okay. Anyway, my name's Alan Van Verenberg, and my wife and I, we live at 421 Vinekeeper Court, which is this home right here. Okay, as you can see, we're directly north of this said property. There is a drainage ditch that runs from approximately where my finger is all the way back, and it drains into this used to be a cow pasture. It's now been taken over by this, what we used to call a junkyard. You guys are calling it light industrial, but it's a junkyard salvage yard. This ditch is always full of oily material that runs off of that property from the south to the north where our subdivision is, okay? The property, as been stated before, that's up here on MLK, this was what was the 4.89 acres that we're talking about tonight, where they're illegally parking cars. Now, I know they're saying that this is just storage, but these are wrecked cars that have been crushed or whatever, and there's fluids leaking out all into the virgin soil. And we are very concerned about our well, and not only water, but the noise pollution. This is a very noisy operation, and it runs 6 days a week, okay? So it affects everyone on this street, and I know there's other property owners all around it, but we're here tonight for our subdivision, okay, Stevens Manor. Also, there's another 1 acre property that is right here that is residential property, and it is now full of junkyard material. There are probably, I took pictures of it, but I don't know how to do all this here, but there's probably 40 to 50 giant dumpsters that are full of material that are stacked up 16 feet tall right behind my house. So whereas before I have a nice buffer here, I've got about a 30-foot tree line that I've let grow, so we don't see what's on the other side of this. But now, because they've acquired this other acre recently, they've put up a 7-foot metal used fence on my property line, and now these dumpsters are sticking straight up above that. So I walk out in my backyard, and what do I see? A junkyard, okay? So again, my main concern is noise pollution and our water contamination, and then the health of everybody that lives in our street. We know for a fact that wastewater is running off this property north into our drainage ditch, and it's contaminating our ditch, which Ms. Miles just explained to you. We've spent thousands of dollars cleaning this up at our expense. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. All right. Did you want to go, Pamela? Because you're signed. No? Okay. All right. Yeah, identify yourself.
I am Pamela Van Varenberg. My husband just spoke. I live at 421 Vinekeeper Court. I just want to quickly, if I can, get this to show. I know we're not here tonight for the new property, but I did want to show what my husband was referring to. By this being residential, this is basically, we can see over the small fence that and it's not even a pretty fence that he put up, but these are dumpsters, and it butts up to our property. I just wanted to show what he was referring to. And that is the residential area that they spoke about that's supposed to be a buffer, and if it's a buffer, he wouldn't be crushing cars on there and utilizing those dumpsters for cars, because we hear it every day. So I just wanted to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have, I think that's it, except for we have George Butler, who didn't say what he wanted to speak on. Is it this one? Yeah. Please. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm George Butler. I'm directly on the west side of him, where that new property is. His cars are actually on my property by 18 feet. He has no fence on my side. And I've approached him many times, and they're stacked, 40 feet high, four cars high. And I definitely oppose this. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. And that is all we had signed up in the public comment for this item. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant for a rebuttal response.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you to the neighbors who have come out to express their concerns. I think some of the factual things there's a difference of opinion on. This is a very highly regulated business because of the nature of the business. There's a lot of environmental permits that are required. My client has all of those permits. The area that was shown that was stained is a concrete area that's built to contain that. The fluids are removed before the cars are stored. There's a lot of things that go into place that it's never going to look like a downtown high-rise. That's not what this business is, but it is a needed business. It's a business that's relied upon by our first responders to take care of, you know, the salvage cars that they have. They have to go somewhere. They salvage the federal government's cars. That being said, back to the land use issues at hand. I know that that was very important for my client to clarify some of those things because he does take a lot of pride in his business and the fact that he was one of the first people to be part of this certified green yard. Back to the land use issues, I did want to say that some of the industrial concerns that the neighbors talked about, I do hear them. All of the industrial activity is on the area that currently has a comp plan designation of LIP. What is happening on this other portion that was purchased in 2012 and has been operating since then is the open storage. And what we're proposing is a category that is expressly intended for this particular type of use, the LIP, light industrial plan category. It says the county areas potentially suitable for industrial activities but are located outside of concentrated industrial designated areas or in areas where the need for a site plan would be beneficial to ensure land use compatibility. And most importantly, this land use plan category will be used in transportation routes such as, you know, MLK, a major arterial, where there is not a concentration of industrial uses and in areas where various concerns and impact to adjacent development can be addressed through site planning. That's exactly what this is. We can make this situation for those neighbors better than it is today. Even if this isn't approved, the industrial use isn't going away. And I do hear a lot of concerns from that. I heard some concerns about where things are parked, and if things are parked on other people's property, that's something that needs to be taken care of 100%. I agree with that, and we can look into those. Like I said, I think there's a different opinion about whether that's true, but if that's true, then that obviously needs to be taken care of. We are asking for this so that we can go forward with a site plan that is going to make this entire situation better for the entire area out here. We think that this is an important use. It has been in my client's family since 1992. It is in an appropriate location given the industrial to the west and the other smattering of light industrial and heavy commercial further to the east. And this area is a mix of uses, and we want to be respectful to that by coming forward with a planned development district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Over to the commissioners for discussions, questions. Yes, Commissioner Sieben.
Can I ask the audience a question? Or
Yeah.
Have you guys spoken to code enforcement at all about any of this, any of your concerns, or can anyone speak to what code enforcement has responded?
Good evening again. Tim Miles. I live at 412 Vinekeeper Court, about 450 feet behind the crusher. Code enforcement has a case on this property, the 1322 East Dr. Martin Luther King, as of December 14th, 2022. He goes out and visits the place every month, and they are cited for improper use of zoning and property use. So I'm pretty sure that's why this gentleman is here tonight, because he's probably going to start collecting a big fine if he's not collecting one already. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the commissioners or comments on this one? Commissioner Bowden, I see you moving and thinking over there.
Well, my question, I guess, is to the applicant. You know, has anyone spoken to the community? Has there been any conversation?
Yes, sir, sorry.
Yeah. Listening to the community residents, it sounds like they've had conversations. So I'm wondering, is it a one-way, or has, any amends or anything is happening?
So we had a community meeting, a notice community meeting back in November, which also supplied our phone number and said, please come out and meet with us. And the only person we had in attendance at that meeting was a community resource officer with the sheriff's office, which we stayed for 2 or 3 hours and talked to him. Now that I know who these people are and I have their contact information, I am happy to continue to talk to them to see how we can address what their concerns are through the site plan zoning. We provided notice of this hearing, which also has contact information. I've been asking the Planning Commission if they've had outreach from anybody, so that if they had outreach, I could outreach. So these are the first time that I'm talking to these people, and I'm happy to continue that conversation. We certainly want to make this a better situation for the neighbors. And I do want to say, yeah, our client, we are going through the code enforcement process. We have been in constant contact with the code enforcement inspectors, letting them know that we are going through this process, letting them know what we're doing. I call them about every 1 or 2 months to let them know where we are in the process. I mean, the code enforcement process is to bring you into compliance, and that's what we're trying to do.
Is that good, Commissioner Bond? You good? Okay, Commissioner Sieben.
How were the neighbors noticed for that meeting that you guys had already?
We noticed it pursuant to the terms of the Planning Commission, which I believe we have to send letters out.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm allowed to, sorry, I'm newish to this. It might behoove you guys to maybe resubmit this application potentially once you've had a chance to have some more discussions with the neighbors that obviously have opinions about how things are happening over there. Just a piece of advice.
I mean, if it's, the preference of the Planning Commission for us to continue this hearing to continue discussions, I mean, that's something I could ask my client if he would give me a moment to try and do that, because we're happy to continue to have more conversations. I think those conversations come to fruition when you get to the details, which are at the site plan zoning, which we're going to be bringing before the board. Hopefully we've requested to have it go at the same time as this, but we were told that it wouldn't do much good to delay this hearing because the Planning Commission doesn't support you all hearing the details of the site plan. I respectfully disagree with that because the comp plan category requires a site plan, but that's why we're here tonight.
Well, it's up to you. We're going to take action, on a consistency or inconsistency finding here based on staff's information. So, whether or not you want to request a continuance is 100% between you and your client.
Can I have one moment to
Sure.
get that response?
I'm going to look around and see if anybody else has any comments or any questions on this one. No, we're not taking comments from the public anymore. That's done. It's up to the commissioners right now. Thank you, though. Ms. Ornita.
I'll just give Commissioner Sieben the information that the mailed notice is required to go to property owners within 500 feet of the application.
Is that just when we have our application, or is that when they have any outreach to the community?
Right. The mailed notice is that the applicant provides has to go to property
Yeah,
owners.
I guess I wasn't sure if the meeting that she was referring to was this meeting or a different meeting.
They will have had to have done it for both. Yeah.
Well, based upon the responses that we're getting and the responses that I'm getting from the community, I would respectfully request a continuance to be able to have the opportunity to do some additional outreach.
Can I ask a question about the timing of the continuance? Is that a request to continue it to the next cycle of plan amendments?
I think we would need to do that.
Okay. That makes that clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so then we would need a motion from one of the commissioners. Let me get Commissioner Koenig. Did you have some thoughts you want to know?
No.
All right. I guess- all right. We would need a motion for a continuance to the next planning amendment cycle from one of the board members to be able to do that if someone's willing to.
I'll make a motion for a continuance for HC CPA 2320 to be put to the next planning cycle.
All right. We have a continuance motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion of continuance to the next planning amendment cycle, and we have a second to that motion by Commissioner Bowden. Are there any comments from the commissioners or questions, discussions? All right. All in support of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
Uh-oh, we're going to have to do the count then. The clerk.
Bowden,
Yes.
Buzza,
Yes.
Cardenas,
No.
Kona,
Yes.
Kress, Surya,
No.
Sebian,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-2. Commissioner Cardenas and Surya voted no.
All right, thank you very much. All right, on to our next item of business for tonight. It is 2C HCCPA 24-01, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, amendment to address new statutory requirement for wastewater planning, and the presenter is Melissa Dickens.
Hi, good evening again, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. This item is a text amendment to the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, 2401. This amendment is intended to address a new requirement that came about during the 2023 legislative session for wastewater planning. Publicly initiated, a text amendment to the One Water chapter. Again, the intent is to meet that new statutory requirement that was implemented for comprehensive plans. It is in the Florida statutes, 163-31776C3. We have been working very actively on this amendment and the analysis with Hillsborough County Water Resources. They have been fantastic partners on this, and we do have a representative from Water Resources who's here virtually. We have prepared the required analysis that is under attachment B. This is a non-adopted, the analysis is not adopted into the comprehensive plan, but it is quite thorough, quite detailed, and has required coordination from both our staff and Water Resources. So again, want to thank them for their assistance. The proposed revision is to add a new policy 4.2.5 to the One Water chapter. This policy essentially mirrors the state statute and the requirements, so that is why there is that level of detail in there. But it is for any development that has more than 50 residential lots with more than one septic system per acre. The county is to consider the feasibility of providing wastewater services within a 10-year planning horizon. So it has to meet that, again, that threshold and consider the feasibility. There are a number of factors that are required to be considered as part of state statute, including the information on the facility, the capacity of the facility, any associated transmission facilities, projections for flow, and a timeline for construction of the wastewater system. And we are required to revisit this from time to time if there are future developments that meet this criteria. We have received comments of support from EPC and Hillsborough County, specifically Water Resources, who has worked on this with us, and no comment from Hillsborough County Public Schools, SwiftMud, or the Hillsborough TPO. There are applicable comprehensive plan policies within the One Water chapter. The first, under Objective 4.2 and policies 4.2.1 through 4.2.3, states that the county should connect existing and future development to water and wastewater in the urban service area. A number of the parcels identified in the analysis, or all of the parcels identified in the analysis, excuse me, are in the urban service area, so this is consistent. And then Objective 5.2 and policies 5.2.1 through 5.2.8 are all about, again, minimizing the adverse impacts of septic tanks. So this amendment would be consistent with those as well. And your recommendation, Planning Commission staff recommends HCCPA 2401 be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we didn't have anyone sign up in the public comment for this one. So with that, I will turn it over to the planning commissioners for questions, comments. discussion on this one? I'm not seeing Commissioner Kona.
Is there any reason why Swift Mud doesn't comment on anything?
So I can't speak to their commenting process. They do, I receive the information that we send them, and that's all the information that I have.
Okay, thank you.
I would add that SwiftMud often comments when something is transmitted to the state. They are sent it again, and we get comments from them at that point.
Yes,
So,
thank you. Yes.
So maybe they just feel more comfortable knowing once it's been transmitted. Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Discussions? Not seeing any. I will go on ahead and close public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Everybody speedy. Commissioner Kona.
Yes, motion to find HC CPA 2401 comprehensive plan text amendment in consistent with the plan.
All right, Commissioner Buzza. All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kona. Second to that motion of consistency by Commissioner Buzza. Are there any comments from the commissioners or questions before we take this vote? All right, would all signify their agreement by saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, on to our next item of business, 2D, HCCPA 2402, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 7200 Causeway Boulevard, and the presenter is Alexis Myers.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Alexis Myers, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 24-02, located at 7200 Causeway Boulevard. This is a privately initiated small-scale map amendment on approximately 4.2 acres. The request is a change of site's future land use category from residential 9 to residential 20. This is the general location map. It is within the urban service area and falls within the limits of the Greater Palm River Community Plan. This is an aerial of the subject site, which is on the north side of Causeway Boulevard between South 72nd Street and Hermosa Drive. It currently contains heavy commercial uses. Light industrial uses are located to the immediate east. Single-family uses extend to the northeast, north, and northwest. Light commercial and vacant uses are located to the west and to the south across Causeway Boulevard are heavy industrial, light industrial, and heavy commercial uses. Okay, here we have some pictures of the site. This is the view of the site from Causeway Boulevard. Then here is from the southern boundary of the site. Here we have a picture from the South 72nd Street looking north. Here is a view from the northern portion of the subject site. Okay. The subject site currently has a future land use designation of residential 9, which is intended to designate areas that are suitable for low, medium density residential, as well as urban scale neighborhood commercial, office, multi-purpose projects, and mixed use developments. Residential 9 extends to the northwest and east. To the south is the office commercial future land use category. The residential 6 future land use category is located further south. The request is to change the the subject site's future land use designation to residential 20, which is to designate areas for high density residential development, as well as urban scale neighborhood commercial, office, multi-purpose projects, and mixed use developments. Okay, here we have the impacts. Overall, the proposed change would allow for an increase in the amount of non-residential development and maximum allowable dwelling units. Planning Commission staff have reviewed the application and has found the request is consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Future Land Use Element Policy 1.4 requires new development to be compatible with the surrounding area. The proposed comprehensive plan and map amendment to residential 20 is compatible with this policy direction. It is also consistent with policy 7.1, which establishes the future land use map, as well as the allowable ranges of uses for each future land use category. Additionally, the proposed change is consistent with the policy direction on future land use categories. The proposal also meets the intent of FLU Objective 16 and its accompanying policies, which require new development, infill, and redevelopment to be compatible with the surrounding area and character, lot size, and density. The request also would allow for compatible development within the residential neighborhood on the north side of Causeway Boulevard. Lastly, the proposed change would allow for development that is consistent with the community design component. Objective 12.1 of the community design component requires new development to be, to complement the surrounding land use and be designed in a way that is compatible. The proposed density and intensity increase are similar to the surrounding development pattern. The request is also consistent with the Greater Palm River Community Plan, as Goal 5A of the plan seeks to promote and provide for opportunities of compatible, well-designed public uses, residential development, business growth, and jobs. Overall, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed map amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation? Please come forward.
Nope, I can just use the elbow, if that's okay. Good evening, my name is Nicole Neugebauer-McKinnis. I'm a land use attorney over at Stearns Weaver Miller in Tampa. My address is 401 East Jackson Street for the record. I'm here today representing Blue Sky Communities in connection with an exciting new affordable housing project over in Palm River. We have an applicant team here today representing the applicant. We have Blue Sky, then Legal and Land Planning is from Stearns Weaver, High Point is our engineer on this, and then Truck and Traffic is our transportation engineer. A little bit about Blue Sky Communities. They've had several projects here in Hillsborough County. They are located in St. Pete, founded in 2012. They are a real estate developer specializing in small-scale apartment communities for working families, and they are the long-term owner and operator of the communities. They're also managed by an in-house property management team. And here are an example of a few of their projects. Most recently, the Uptown Sky project is their most recently approved project and constructed. So the parcel that we're talking about here today is located at 7200 Causeway Boulevard in Tampa. It's west of Highway 301, north of Causeway Boulevard, east of Highway 301, and south of Palm River Road. Located at Folio 045531, it's about 4.2 acres within the urban service area, and the current use is heavy commercial. Here's a current future land use map for the property. It is in the R9 future land use category as noted by staff. For the zoning district, it does have a split zoning. A portion is in RSC 9, another portion is in commercial general. So here today we're requesting to change the future land use category from residential 9 to residential 20. This would allow an increase in the density from 9 units to the acre to 20 units to the acre. This will result in a density or a development unit increase of about 47 units between 37 units allowed today and 84 units that would be allowed under the new future land use category. We did have a community meeting with neighbors for this project on January 31st. We had a few members of the community come out and ask some questions, but overall there did not appear to be any concerns with this project. In addition to the future land use amendment, we are asking for the affordable housing density bonus. This would allow for a maximum density up to 35 units to the acre. However, there is a companion PD rezoning application that would restrict this property down to 21.43 units to the acre. In addition, the project will be restricted to affordable housing for 50 years. And that is specific to this site, not necessarily all sites using the affordable housing density bonus. So this project would be required to be restricted for a very long time. In addition, a little bit about the affordable housing density bonus for those who may not have seen this come across their desk very often. So with that density bonus, 20% of your site has to be restricted to affordable housing. Within that 20%, 50% of that has to be restricted to 100% of area median income. The other 50% is restricted to 60% of area median income and below. Blue Sky is a unique affordable housing operator and owner in that they are actually restricting all of the units to 80% of area median income and below. So here are a few examples of what this looks like. This is in Hillsborough County. So they have the income that's limited for depending on the household, and then also the rent limit for each of those depending on bedroom type. As I mentioned, we do have a companion rezoning application for this site. This would allow for 90 affordable housing units on here, as I mentioned, at a density of 21.43 acres, units to the acre. Our access is off of 72nd based on our discussions with FDOT as they requested. We also have a significant setback for that building from the single family residential to the north in order to provide a very nice buffer. And in addition, we are limiting to 4 stories. From a compatibility perspective, staff did a great job kind of going over what this area looks like. There is a lot of scattered commercial, light and heavy industrial in this area, and then residential to the north. This property is also in the Greater Palm River Community Plan. The Greater Palm River Community Plan designates this area along Causeway as mixed use, directs development to Causeway Boulevard, and there's multiple goals and strategies talking about supporting new infill development, supporting affordable housing, supporting residential choice. So all of that to say that this project would be compatible with the Palm River Plan. Staff also mentioned there was multiple comp plan policies and objectives that this project is also consistent with. I did want to mention, I know that there was a couple of questions at the briefing, one about the transit services that would be available here. There's not currently a HART bus route that is planned for this area, but there are 2 bus stops within half a mile of this site. Under the Hillsborough County Code, it's considered close by to mass transit if it's less than a mile from the site. So there are 2 bus stops in this area. It also was asked whether there were any other comp plan amendments in this area that were approving housing. There were 2 back in 2018 and 2019 that were unanimously approved by the Planning Commission and the BOCC. And with that, we request your recommendation of approval, and we're available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we only had 1 individual sign up. Well, we may have 2 here, but I'll get to the second one in a moment. The first we had sign up online is Gilver Wheeler. Is Gilver Wheeler? HTV, you there?
Sorry, they did not sign in.
Welcome back. Thank you. All right, then we will go to the in-person sign up, and I will try Elise Batzel. No? Okay, all right. And that was all we had for this one. So with that, I will turn it over to the commissioners for questions, discussion, comments, statements.
This is an easy one, I think. It's a perfect transition, gets industrial out of the neighborhood. It's the easiest one of the night.
All right. Commissioner Sieben?
Just a heads up, I'm submitting a conflict form.
Okay. So no vote from Commissioner Sieben. Commissioner Buzzer seems to like it. I like it. What else more do you need? Are there any other comments or questions, discussions of this one? No, not seeing any lights. Tracy?
Commissioner Sieben, you do need to declare the nature of your conflict, if you would, please.
The company I work for is a related entity to this company.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, then I will go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Buzzard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we find HC CPA 24-02 consistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan for under the County Commission.
All right, that's a motion of Commissioner Soria.
I will second the motion.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Buzza, a second to that motion by Commissioner Soria. Are there any questions or comments before we vote? All right, not seeing any, then we'll all signify their approval. The motion by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously, except for Commissioner Sieben, who abstained from voting. All right, next up, we have Item 2E, HCCPA 24-03, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 1347 North Kingsway Road, and the presenter is Alexis Myers again. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Alexis Myers again with the Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2403, located at 1347 North Kingsway Road. This is a privately initiated plan amendment that is small in scale and approximately 8.57 acres. The request is to go from residential 1 to the light industrial future land use category. Here is the general location map. This amendment is within the limits, is within the rural area and within the limits of the Tonono-Sassa Community Plan. It is located north of Interstate 4 and east of Kingsway Road and Sly Avenue. Here is the area of the site. For visual context, the subject properties are outlined in pink, and the blue line indicates the urban service area boundary. There is a vacant single-family home on one of the parcels, while the other is vacant. Kingsway Road also goes over Interstate 4 as well. As far as the uses in the area, there are single-family uses to the north, west, and along the south across Interstate 4. There is also agricultural and vacant land in the area. Here is a picture of the site looking east from Kingsway Road. Here we have another picture looking southeast from Kingsway Road. This is looking south from Kingsway Road, and Interstate 4 is right under Kingsway Road. Here's another picture looking west towards Sly Avenue. And then we have one looking north from Kingsway Road. Okay. Currently, the future land use designation of the site is residential 1. The typical uses include farms, ranches, residential uses, rural-scale neighborhood commercial uses, offices, and multi-purpose projects. Commercial, office, and multi-purpose projects shall meet locational criteria for a specific land use. Other future land use designations shown in this map include residential 4 and agricultural estate 125th. The applicant, again, is requesting to change the future land use category to light industrial. Typical uses in light industrial include processing, manufacturing, and assembly of materials, including food products, storage, furniture, or apparel manufacturing, packaging plants, wholesaling/showrooms with retail sales, which occupy no more than 20% of the floor area of the principal uses, offices, research/corporate parks as the predominant uses and subordinate uses, or services such as hotels, motels, restaurants, suburban scale, retail establishments, or recreational facilities. Next, we have the impacts. As far as the existing conditions, currently under residential 1, which allows up to 1 dwelling unit per gross acre, the site could consider up to 8 dwelling units or 110,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Under the proposed future land use category of light industrial, no residential is allowed except limited accessory residential. The site could consider around 280,000 square feet of non-residential uses. The proposed amendment will result in the elimination of residential uses. However, it will increase non-residential uses and introduce industrial use within a predominantly residential and agricultural area. Okay, here we have the consistency review. Planning Commission staff have reviewed the application and has found that the request is inconsistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. The request would allow for development that is incompatible within the rural area. Future Land Use Element Policy 4.1 characterizes the rural area as low density, large lot residential. The proposed change to the light industrial future land use category is not similar in character to the surrounding area, which is predominantly made of residential and agricultural. The proposal also does not meet the intent of FLU Objective 16 and its accompanying policies, which require new development, infill, and redevelopment to be compatible with the surrounding area in lot size, character, and density. Additionally, the proposed change would allow for development that is inconsistent with the community design component, Goal 12 of the community design component, and the FLU requires new developments to recognize the existing community and be designated to relate and be compatible to the predominant character of the surrounding area. In this case, the surrounding land use pattern is mostly single family, and the proposed amendment to light industrial does not align with the character of the surrounding area. Oh, I apologize. Let me go back. I forgot to mention the Tonota-Sassa Community Plan. The request is also inconsistent with the Tonota-Sassa Community Plan. The Tonota-Sassa Community Plan strives to empower the residents, property owners, and business owners in setting the direction and providing ongoing management and Tonota-Sassa's future growth and development toward a community that adds value and enhances quality of life. The plan also ensures that new development maintains and enhances Tonota-Sassa's unique character and sense of place and provide a place for community activities and events. The proposed amendment does not complement the goals and strategies of this plan. Overall, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed map amendment be found inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And this concludes my presentation for 2403, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Good evening. I have a PowerPoint to bring up here. Oh, good. Very good. Thank you. Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue North, number 451 in St. Petersburg. Pleasure to be here this evening. I'm here with HCCPA 24-03. I think the staff has presented to you well the location. As you know, we're abutting Interstate 4 West, which, by the way, was not mentioned a single word that we abut Interstate 4, which I think is a critical factor not mentioned by the staff. This is Res 1 to light industrial. We do have a companion rezoning application. We have a number of conditions specific in the zoning, which include that it is a very specific use for one item and one item only. That is for trench boxes, which are these boxes that protect people when they're in trenches. That is the only use that is proposed under the application for zoning. Second restriction are extreme buffers on both sides, to the north at 60 feet and to the west at 60 feet. We're even putting 15-foot buffer along Interstate 4. Restriction number 3 is that where forestation exists, it will remain, versus the very limited buffering or screening provided required by the code. And you've seen some pictures. You can see that the site is very well forested. Now, this is a picture of the existing site to show you how low impacting and little use of the property is. You can see that the boxes are collapsed and there's very little room that's used for them. That's really all that's involved with the use. This is another picture of it just to get you familiar with it. They stack the boxes with wood in between so they're not crashing or clacking or creating a lot of noise as they're put back together. And they have just a little shed on the property. That's about it. Now, interestingly enough, your staff report mentions nothing about the county landfill or the FDOT weigh station, or according to Google, Suncoast Plastic Fabrication activity, which is right in this immediate vicinity. There's not a single word about it. The only discussion was large acre residential and rural area. And that's what your staff says. Your staff says that the land use pattern is mostly single family, predominantly residential and agricultural area, and that the area is predominantly made up of residential and agricultural uses. But the reality is that we abut a roadway that carries 154,000 vehicles per day. It is the loudest, most active, most odor producing, most light producing, 24/7, 24 hours a day, 365 days per year, 7 days a week. Never ends. Of the major arterial, I don't think you can find anything in this county that's louder or more impacting than this roadway that we abut, and yet your staff report does not mention a word of that. Again, Planning Commission says surrounding development patterns mostly comprised of large rural residential lots. I showed you that that is absolutely not the case, that there are very intensive uses in the immediate vicinity. So here's a picture. I'm going to show you a video. We don't believe that's appropriate for residential in any manner or any case whatsoever. The entire staff analysis ignores all those points, never even mentions them or considers them. So when your staff tells you to look at policies 16.1.2 and .3, that require new development and make it compatible, what do those policies actually say? Because we are following those policies to the letter. 16.1 notes requiring buffering areas and screening devices between unlike land uses. I showed you we're providing 60-foot buffering, which is double what the county requires, plus providing substantially more buffering and screening that the code requires. 16.2 talks about buffering and screening techniques and the control of specific land uses. That's exactly what we're doing. We have restricted it to one use only, to a very non-impacting, very low-level use, doesn't make any noise, very seldomly used. And again, buffering and screening we're providing. Policy 16.3, another policy directed by your staff specifically for this request, creation of complementary uses or mitigation of adverse impacts, which is exactly what we've done. We have mitigated potentially adverse impacts by restricting the use, by providing double or even triple the buffering and screening, and by providing remaining forestation or forestation remain where it is. Development Services understood that. Zoning Department understood that, and their report notes, given the adjacent zoning development pattern, which I've shown you is different than the staff report, finds that the site characteristics requires buffering, screening, and setbacks of the proposed use restrictions provide appropriate mitigation for any potential impacts of the proposed rezoning. I think that's a very important statement that your colleagues in zoning accepted and recommend differently than your staff, considering the buffering screen that we're doing. Now, here's an important factor. You've heard, with great respect to your chairman, you heard him talk about not considering zoning considerations. Yet your policies, 16.1, 2, and 3, specifically direct you to look at mitigating adverse impacts by buffering and screening and restrictions of uses. Those three things we've done. And we've done them specifically for this request so that it does not cause adverse impacts. Objective 9, all existing future land use development shall be made consistent with comprehensive plan. We have filed that rezoning, companion zoning. It's filed, it's part of the record. The commissioners have directed the county that they will be reviewed together. Here's an interesting point. Right across the street, a couple years ago, we came in to go from residential 4 to residential 6 for a residential project. The Planning Commission said no. The Board of County Commissioners said no. So I have to ask you, as I'll ask the Board of County Commissioners, what are we to do on properties that are abutting I-4? We don't want to have more residential, but per your staff recommendation, we don't want to have a very quiet, controlled industrial use. What do we put against properties on I-4 that carry 154,000 vehicles per day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Noise, light, impacts consistent. They only use 2 small trucks. They use a Ford 150 and maybe the other truck if they're carrying 2 or 3 of these units. Very quiet, very, very low impact. And we've had no calls of opposition. No one's come forward to public hearings. The property owner to the next one north has an email in the record saying no opposition. We haven't heard from anyone, so no one has any concerns or objections to it that we've heard from. Now, I do have one video I want to play for you, if I may. Which one of these? Oh, there it is. So the property under your consideration is the forested area shown on the left. Trucks, vehicles, non-stopping. Analysis by your staff does not include that or the other intensive uses I told you about. I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but I think that's critical, the difference between what your staff has characterized and brought forward versus what the realities are, and what we've done to mitigate and what we tried to do in the past. So with that, we appreciate your attention and be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Over to the public, we had one individual sign up for this one, and that would be Dom or Palm. Yes, please come forward. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Tom St. Ange. I live at 1460 North Kingsway. Since this project has started, they have had bomb fires there. They've almost closed I-4 down. The fire department's been there 4 or 5 times, shutting them down because they had a big water truck. They made them put it out. I mean, it's just, you can't even leave your windows open. They cut every tree off down there. I don't think the code enforcement's been there. I don't know what the results of them are, but they cut the trees down, then they had dug big holes, and they burned the fires, or burned the trees with no one there. The fire department's been there so many times, closing them down because of that, and there's always tractor trailers pulling in there. They've blocked the streets, Kingsway, to unload equipment. I mean, they've had backhoes in there and water trucks and all kinds of stuff. They blocked Sly with trucks. And they haven't even started. And the other day, they had about 15 trucks of pouring asphalt down, ground up asphalt, and they've blocked the streets because you have to go around them because they're sitting in the middle of the street to turn in, because it's a real sharp turn coming off of Kingsway. I mean, it's almost a 90-degree turn to go into that driveway, and you got to go down. I live at 1460, and I've had to close my windows. The beautiful weather, because the smoke has been so bad in the last month. I mean, if you go out there and look, I mean, then they had a big Bunsen burner in there blowing the smoke, and they about closed I-4 down. And this is just starting, so what's it going to be like a year from now? And this is residential. It's a real quiet neighborhood. The only problem we have is the trucks coming, the dump trucks coming, trying to fly up the hill. And the sheriff's been working on that because they get down at the end of the street and they got to get up enough speed to get up the hill when they're full. But it's just constantly. So we're going to have more problems with this, whatever it's going to put here, rather than have houses put back in there. I mean, it's been quiet, and in the last, since this has started, it's been noisy every single day. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that's the only individual we had sign up for this one, so I will turn it back over to the applicant for a response.
Clearly, I'm not sure what the gentleman's speaking about. I visited the site a number of times, and when I was there's been no activity. I'm not aware of any code enforcement citations. I'm not aware of any other infractions that the gentleman is speaking about. Last time I was there, there's just one home that is in very poor shape that's going to be removed, and that's the most I could tell you. From what I've heard about with great respect to the gentleman, regarding the policy issues, future land use issues, and zoning issues, I'll throw that in. What he's been speaking about, some activity at that site or near that site, that's the best I can tell. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Over to the commissioners for questions, comments, discussion of this. I'd like to remind everyone that zoning issues, irrespective of Mr. Pressman's disrespect for my talking and calling me out on what I say, are not allowed in here and not part of our purview, right? So we need to focus on land use decisions when we're dealing with this stuff. And Mr. Pressman, just a word of advice, if you want to speak to buffering and tree planting, you can do so by saying simply, we're going to do buffering and tree planting. You don't have to show zoning maps to us. You don't have to go deep into zoning. So,
with all due respect, first of all, I thought you said the word disrespect, which is absolutely not the case, number one. If I misheard that?
No, you didn't.
No disrespect whatsoever. In fact, I think I presented my comments very respectfully, number one. Number two, what I was referring to are your comp plan policies, 16.1, 2, and 3, that specifically direct review by mitigation of buffering and screening. Those are your policies. I brought forward the zoning items up front, so at least you had a little understanding of what's proposed in a companion. But it's your policies, again, with all due respect, that direct you and very clearly state how you're supposed to review an item of this nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any comments, questions, discussion items from the commissioners? Yes, Ms. Juanita.
I know you already addressed the zoning issues. I probably just feel compelled to emphasize that there's no guarantee that it will be, with this land use category, that it's light industrial. It could be any light industrial use. It could be anything that complies with the M zoning district, which would not necessarily have the greater buffers or setbacks that Mr. Pressman indicated. Additionally, I looked in the agency comments, and the comments from Development Services on the plan amendment did not indicate that they thought that there was mitigation. Those comments, I believe, must have been on the companion rezoning. And again, I just want to make sure we're keeping those two processes separate. Thank you.
All right. Are there any more thoughts or discussion items? I'd like to remind everyone that if you're going to go against staff, you will need some objectives or policies to quote, right, in making your motion. So keep that thought at hand. Not seeing any more lights coming on, then I'll go on ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Buzza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move we find CPA 24-03 inconsistent with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan and forward on to the County Commission.
All right, we have a motion of inconsistency finding by Commissioner Buzza. A second by Commissioner Bowden. Are there any questions, comments, or discussions from the commissioners?
I'll just say one thing. I see both sides of this this issue. I do think that there are said policies, like Mr. Pressman said, 16.1, 16.2, 6.3, that could be open to some sort of interpretation. And considering the fact that I do think that we need to be sensitive to potential areas that could be worthy of light industrial investment. I think it's something, not all areas, obviously, but this one is a little bit different. I think we should be sensitive, and I think we should actually make sure that the staff analysis should, I think, tell at least both sides of the policy when it comes to things of this nature that are in conflict.
Thank you. All right. Are there any more comments, statements before we go ahead and make a vote on the motion before us? Not seeing any, then I would like to ask all those who approve to say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Next item of business we have is 2F, HCCPA 24-04, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Public Schools Facilities Element Update, and the presenter is Sophia Garantiva.
All right, good evening, commissioners. Sophia Garantiva, Planning Commission staff, here to present on HCCPA 2404, Public Schools Facilities Element. Just some background on the amendment. This is a publicly initiated amendment. The Public Schools Facilities Element is part of the governance chapter of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. It is considered an optional comprehensive plan element, but it's also a tool that is used to ensure intergovernmental coordination on school planning specifically. This element was last revised back in 2016, and this update is part of the county's overall comprehensive plan update and includes changes prompted by state legislation revisions, specifically within chapters 1013 and 163 of the Florida state statutes, which relate to educational facilities, standards, and comprehensive planning and concurrency, respectively. The update also includes changes based on the revised interlocal agreement for school facilities planning, siting, and concurrency, otherwise known as the ILA. Planning Commission staff work closely with the school district staff on developing the proposed language. So to review the proposed substantive policy changes, the policies regarding intergovernmental coordination and sharing of information are being updated to remove old references to coordination committees that have been already dissolved. And these committees were made up of jurisdictional staff and also including the references to the newly formed school working group per the revised interlocal agreement. The policies outlining criteria for siting of school facilities are being updated, including criteria for location of schools within the rural area per the revised interlocal agreement. Policies outlining the concurrency review process and proportionate share process are being modified to be consistent with revised state statutes. The level of service table, which is located in the capital improvement section, is also being modified to reflect updated school types, again, per the revised interlocal agreement. Overall, there's been streamlining of the language and updating, the update retained important components of the existing element, including all three of the existing goals. It did remove duplicative policies that are found in other sections of the comprehensive plan or processes that are detailed in the interlocal agreement. References to Florida state statutes, the interlocal agreement sections were also updated or removed if they were no longer applicable. And a document tracking all of the policy changes is included in the staff report as attachment F. To summarize our public engagement opportunities, a virtual public meeting was held on March 28th with school district staff in attendance. We had approximately 35 registrants. The meeting was advertised through the agency's newsletter and on social media. There was also a project webpage where the public can follow the process and provide comments. We have not received any public comments to date. And also an informational presentation to the school board is being scheduled. And once that date is set, that information will be shared on the website. Agency comments, there were no objections received from the reviewing agencies. The amendments that have comments from Hillsborough County and Hillsborough County Public School staff, and they were considered and incorporated where feasible in the proposed language. The proposed amendment is consistent with the public schools facilities element generally, but more specifically with objectives 1.5 and 2.1, and also policy 3.1.1, as well as the objective 1.8 from the capital improvement section, and policy 1.1.1, and objective 1.4, and policy 1.4.1 of the intergovernmental coordination section. As such, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed text amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, policies of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And that concludes my presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Was this publicly or privately initiated?
Publicly.
Public, okay. I don't think we had anyone sign up for this one, so I will turn it over to planning commissioners for questions, comments, discussion. I'm not seeing anyone hurrying to lights, going once, going twice. I'm going to close public comment on this item and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Soria.
I'd like to forward the motion to pass HCCPA 24-04, Public School Facilities Element.
All right.
Second.
Motion of consistency finding, a second to that. Motion of consistency by Commissioner Soria, a second to that motion by Commissioner Kona. Are there any more thoughts, discussion, statements from the commissioners before we vote? Not seeing any, then would all signify their agreement by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up, and lastly, we have item 2G, HCCPA 2405, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, 13609 North Florida Avenue, and the presenter is David Hay.
Good evening, Commissioners. David Hay with your Planning Commission staff. The next item, the final item for your review tonight is HCCPA 24-05. It is located at 13609 North Florida Avenue. The request is privately initiated. It's small scale. It's approximately 2.83 acres. Currently, the subject site has a split land use designation. The front portion is along North Florida Avenue, has that office commercial 20, and the eastern side of the parcel has a residential 12 future land use designation. The applicant is seeking to unify the subject site under that office commercial 20 future land use category. General location, it is up here, right where the star is at. It is located within the urban service area. It is also within the boundaries of the greater Carrollwood-Northdale community plan. It's in the urban service area. Here we have an aerial of the subject site. The subject site is outlined in yellow. You've got North Florida Avenue to the west, which there's a light and heavy Commercial uses, mostly on this stretch of North Florida Avenue. To the south, there's Fletcher Avenue. Again, there's some light and heavy commercial uses. You do have the Interstate 275 further to the east. To the east, under these trees, there is a single-family detached residential neighborhood, and that pattern continues up in this area. There are some apartments further to the north, and this is a mobile home park further to the west. All right, I have some photos. We're looking east toward the subject site from North Florida Avenue. We're standing out on the sidewalk. Now we're shifting south. The subject site is on the left. We're looking south down North Florida Avenue. Here we're standing on the sidewalk in front of the subject site, so the subject site is behind us. We're looking across North Florida Avenue. Those are offices and some light commercial uses. Here we're on North Florida Avenue, just north of the subject site. The subject site is behind that wall on the right. These look like offices when I went down there. There is some storage use. It seems to be occurring at the end, but mostly offices. All right, this is looking from the subdivision directly to the east of the subject site. We're at the dead end of that subdivision looking into the subject site. It should be noted there's a creek system that runs between the subject site and the subdivision. It's hard to see there. It's Curiosity Creek. So there's an additional kind of green space buffer. And here we're turning around. We're now looking down. So the subject site is behind us, and we're looking down toward the Interstate 275. You can kind of see at the end of this subdivision down there. All right, here we have the adopted future land use map. You can see that land use split. There's this red is the office commercial 20, and then this kind of yellowish orange color is residential 12. On the other side of North Florida Avenue, it does go down to residential 4, and then there is some public, quasi-public way to the southwest. So if approved, the entire site would now be that office commercial 20. And you can see the creek system that kind of, runs through the future land use map there. Here we have the impact slide. So currently under that, the split land use, they could be considered for up to 45 dwelling units or a maximum of 77,972 square feet, that mostly being on the front portion near Florida Avenue. Under the potential for the office commercial 20 over the entire site, the potential density goes up to 56 units, and the potential non-residential square footage up to 92,000 square feet. It would allow for commercial intensive uses in the back under that office commercial 20. It should be noted, as always, we seek input from our partner agencies, and none raised any objections to the proposed request. Your Planning Commission staff has reviewed the proposed request and found the request consistent with 3 main policy areas. First, though the proposal is expanding the office commercial 20, staff found that overall the request furthers several neighborhood protection-related policies. Due to the location of Curiosity Creek on the eastern boundary, access will be limited to North Florida Avenue. Curiosity Creek and the typical required setbacks will also provide for additional buffering and screening from the subject site to the single-family detached residential neighborhood to the east. Also, the request will allow for a development pattern similar to what is planned along this portion of North Florida Avenue. There are already existing office commercial 20 future land use category at a similar depth off of North Florida Avenue. I think you saw the northern one. The depth of the office commercial 20 is similar to the north, approximately 1,000 feet to the north, and also to the south, 1,400 feet to the south, has the same depth of the office commercial 20. Staff also found that the proposed request is consistent with a number of policies related to the encouragement of transit supportive development. Transit is also provided along this portion of North Florida Avenue by Hart's Route 44, which connects the subject site to the University Area Transit Center. Additional Hart routes run along nearby Fletcher Avenue, connecting the subject site to a number of major activity centers such as downtown Tampa and portions of Dale Mabry Highway up in Carrollwood. The proposed plan amendment would further the intent of mobility section policy 5.3.5 by allowing for additional intensity and density within proximity to transit service. The subject site is also located within the boundaries of the Greater Carrollwood-Northdale Community Plan, which encourages additional density within proximity to transit, especially along North Florida Avenue and North Dale Mabry Highway. The proposed plan amendment is consistent with the growth strategies outlined within the community plan. So therefore, your staff is recommending to you all this evening that the proposed map amendment be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, sir. Does the applicant have a presentation? Sat here so patiently all night.
Good evening, Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hill, Ward and Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700. I'm representing the applicant, which is also Blue Sky Communities, this evening. This is, I think David did a great job. I don't have a separate presentation, knowing we'd be last and knowing he'd kind of cover everything for us. I think this is pretty straightforward. We are unifying the future land use to OC20. This is also going to be an affordable housing site, but I won't go into that this evening. It's not for your consideration. I think it stands on the merits of the OC20, the Res 12 to OC20, and we're here to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you. All right. I don't believe we had anyone sign up for this one. No, it's just Cammie. So I will turn it over to the commissioners for comments, questions, discussion items on this one. Not seeing any lights, head shaking. And I will close the public comment on this one and open it up to motions from the commissioners. Commissioner Kona.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we find HC CPA 2405 comprehensive plan consistent with the comprehensive plan. Sorry.
Commissioner Buzza.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kona. Second to that motion by Commissioner Buzza. Are there any comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any, then would all signify their agreement by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And that was our last item of business. So ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. At 8:13, this meeting is adjourned.